Hello, all. Welcome. Hopefully, we'll have a few more people still joining us, but appreciate you being here today. I am Lottie Byram. I am the Venture Programs Manager at the Dingman Center for Entrepreneurship. We help students across campus of all backgrounds launch their ventures. Joining us today is Nima Farshi from CSVC. Nima, will you go ahead and say hello?
Hi, everyone. My name is Nima Farshi. I'm the director of the Center for Social Value Creation. Our mission is to educate, engage, and empower our students to create a better world through business. We're really excited to have Martin Mayorga here to talk about how a profitable business can be impact-driven at the same time. Thanks, Lottie.
Pleasure. And so, as Nima has already alluded to, we have Martin Mayorga joining us today. I'll give you a brief bio and then I'll let him take the wheel. So Martin is the youngest of four, was born in Guatemala City, Guatemala. An earthquake and a revolution kept the Mayorga family on the move, and after spending most of his childhood moving from Nicaragua to Costa Rica to Peru, Martin arrived in the United States. Through these experiences, he had seen firsthand the socioeconomic disparity between those who grow our food and those who sell it, and grew determined to rebalance those inequities himself. And so it was founded Mayorga Organics. It sells organic artisanal coffees, seeds, grains, and beans. Since 1997, the company has built a reputation as industry leaders by partnering with farmers rather than trading with them, and investing in sustainability at all levels, not only in Latin America, but also in their facilities. So I'll let Martin take it from here. Oh, and also, thank you. This is a part of the Pitch Dingman Competition series preparation workshops. So I'm always bad at the promo stuff here. There is, oh, that doesn't go to you. That's going straight to Nima. Here is more information if you want to see more about other workshops that are coming up soon, if you are interested in applying to the competition or just want to learn more about entrepreneurship. Martin, please take it away.
All right.
Thanks for being here today.
I appreciate it. I appreciate the intro. Actually covered a lot of, probably about a third of my talk was going to be a little bit about the background of, basically having accidentally started a company. I think in the mid 90s when I started, being an entrepreneur it was almost kind of weird. I went to Georgetown, I studied finance, and the track for people that went to, that studied finance or went to business school was going to the big firms, going to Wall Street. So really my path was a very contrarian path based on what was going on in the mid 90s with entrepreneurial ventures not really being as supported as they are now. And ultimately what it was just a spin-off of what I saw in the stark difference between what I saw growing up in countries where a lot of the things that we see daily, like coffee, that we kind of take for granted, are truly part of everyday life and everyday economies there. For good and mostly for bad, to be honest, because over the years, a lot of these products have been commoditized. The humanity has been kind of extracted out where we deal with commodity markets and it's basically buy low, sell high. And we're dealing with countries that have been extracted from over the years, and it has created a lot of poverty. So I grew up in countries, Guatemala, Nicaragua. Costa Rica wasn't as bad, but relative to the US, it's still not as developed. Whereas you mentioned, I mean, there was earthquakes, revolutions. When we were in Peru, it was during Shining Path, so terrorism, and a lot of different variables you deal with, and on top of that, a lot of poverty. And what I recognized was that a lot of the poverty was centered around the things that supposedly made these countries great. You look at what are the top exports of Nicaragua? It's beef, it's this, it's that. Well, it didn't really make an impact to the economy. It helped two families. It helped one group, two groups. So I saw a lot of the inequities there. And then I came to the US pretty young, and it was just mesmerizing. I mean, first of all, it felt so clean and safe just to be in the US, and the difference was just remarkable. But then to see the disposable income, I'd never seen anything like that, and I was young, but I started kind of doing the math, and my dad was an economist, so I always had a brain for finance and for numbers. But I started doing the math and I said, well, there's something going on here, because these countries are so poor and these people are so poor that are growing these products that I'm seeing sold at prices that are multiples higher than what they cost. And it really bothered me, because it bothered me in the fact that the extraction from the countries where I grew up was continuing, but also for the consumer, because consumers were being ripped off. And a lot of times tricked into believing they were part of something good. So I was at Georgetown and I was trying to figure out ways to pay for school, and I worked every job I could. I waited tables, and I had an uncle who was growing coffee, and he said, look, I'm going to get rid of my farm because I got it back after the revolution. I built it up. I'm selling a lot of volume, but I just can't pay the bills. So I asked him why. He walked me through the supply chain. I said, look, that's insane. Why are you selling to all these people to get to the US? I'm in the US. Let's work something out. So we started basically doing direct trade in 94, 95, where I would bring his coffee up to the US and I sold it to large roasters. I was surprised that a lot of them were very hesitant because they distrusted doing business internationally. And we're talking an industry that's all international because coffee only grows outside the US mainly. And so there was this weird hesitation, but we were able to really come up with a very simple, straightforward model where we sold his coffee up in the States, got a nice premium. I got a small piece to pay for Georgetown, and he kept his farm. And as that kept working, I kept realizing there was something fundamentally wrong. It was too easy, to be honest. It was too easy to be competitive, to do a better job on quality, and to create something that created sustainability in Latin America. So I decided to kind of go all in on it. And I left school. I put all my effort into building the business, and I really learned everything about the trade side of things. And ultimately what I really did was understand the financial piece. And, I think understanding the flow of money and the use of access to capital really taught me that this was not a supply chain issue. This was not a access to market issue. This was an access to capital issue. And I decided to just build a brand within the US market, use the capital of the consumer to build a business. And ultimately what I did, and it was because I was young and naive, but I'm glad I did this. I really didn't do things the way most companies are started up, right? Most companies have their plan. Here's how much we need. Here's our burn rate. Here's the, all the terms that you hear. You get lawyers that come in, and I didn't do any of that. I incorporated myself, and this is in the old days when you had to go to pull up trademarks on a microfilm. That's how old I am. So I did it all myself because I couldn't afford anything else. But it taught me that the metrics that existed didn't make sense for what I was doing. And what it taught me was to create my own metrics and to operate in my own kind of space and bubble of what I deemed to be success. So for me, success was our producers making a little bit more, our consumers getting a benefit financially, quality-wise, and can we keep the lights on and make a little money to keep investing into the business? And I grew it incrementally that way. I didn't ever have investors. I didn't ever have big equity or debt raises. And what I did is I understood the power of the market. Nowadays it's different. I think the market's more saturated. When I was starting out, there weren't people doing what I was doing, and I was one of the few. So growing was very easy, and growing and leveraging and understanding the time of money and how I could sell versus how I could get paid versus how I could buy. And I built the business that way, very pretty aggressively in some sense, but over time. And I think the biggest lesson I learned and the biggest benefit I had was my knowledge of finance. And that's one of the big things. And I kind of consult and help a lot of young startups, and I invest in some. And my biggest thing is, if you don't know the finance piece of it, you have to stop everything and figure that out first. Because especially in my kind of business, what I'm seeing is a lot of hobbyists. And they think they're in business, but they don't know their metrics enough to understand. And even yesterday, I was giving a conversation with a guy that's building a business and it's growing. And I said, look, what you're doing today, he's roasting coffee himself, bagging it, delivering it. I was doing that, but the whole time I was doing that, I was in my head doing the math of what are the costs associated with this so that I can grow out of this. Because I don't want to be bagging coffee and delivering it myself every day. But if I don't know those metrics, if I don't know the cost structure behind my growth, I'm going to grow into debt and I'm going to grow into problems. So I think that was one of the biggest things that I had the benefit of just having in me, which is understanding the metrics of my growth and my scalability, and also understanding the metrics of my go-to-market strategy. Because if you don't have your pricing strategy laid out today, because I can open a website on Shopify and sell coffee at $20 a pound and think that's the market. But when I go to Whole Foods and the retail price is $20 a pound, we need to buy it at 10. it's a whole different economic model that if you're not prepared for, you're basically driving yourself into a corner of basically just selling to consumers. So, for me, I learned a lot of the stuff on the fly. I was fortunate enough that I did start in college. So I had great resources with professors that helped me out and taught me a lot of things. But my biggest benefit was I really knew why I wanted to build my business, which was to help producers and consumers. But I also knew that it was easy to do because the economics were so skewed. I think one thing that I'm seeing nowadays in my industry that is dangerous is there's this perception that if people think, well, if I say I'm going to do those things, I'll be the next Tom Shoes of coffee. And Tom Shoes kind of did their thing a long time ago, and that's kind of a thing of the past. But what I'm seeing now is people use the do good strategy as marketing, and that never works. I think if you don't build it into your own business model, and we have our own metrics internally, how many producers are we working with? What is our price premium generating per family, per community, per country? And those are all internal metrics that we use because we don't care about, what's our ROI on this investment. We don't think as a typical business. So we really have our own interesting set of metrics. Now we have the luxury of having that because I own 100% of the company. I don't have investors. I don't have a board. I don't need to answer to anybody. My net income is anywhere between 7 and 9%. I'm very happy with that. My competitors are happy with 17 to 20%. So what we are looking at is growing our business to a larger scale and taking that differential we have between, let's say, our 9% net income versus our competitors 18, that 9% spread, we go and give that to the farmer and pass it along to the consumer. So our metrics are going to be a lot different. And that makes us, we're not a company that's growing to be transacted, to be bought. I've probably had 12 offers in the last year to be bought. So it still is appealing. It's an appealing model for larger companies. My biggest thing is if you really want to build a business that is going to make an impact, you have to build that impact into your model. And the biggest mistake I see is people want to build a business with the metrics that were started in the 50s and create a business in 2020 that is going to do good for the planet, other people, communities. And it doesn't, it's a conflict. If it's not built into your business and it's not built into understand, and it could be as simple as we're not going to seek 20% net, we're going to seek 10%. You just found 10% of a benefit that you can allocate or create some sort of value. But I think that's something that I've seen as a problem. I've seen companies really kind of hit a wall where, they say the right things, but they're still doing the typical, we have our board and we have this and we have that. And they have all the fat around the operational model. They can't give anybody value because their first priority is giving their investor values or returns. So they have the old metrics, and it's very tough to operate that way. And we've been fortunate that we've stayed true to that. And we will get rid of clients if they don't meet our metrics, where they say, look, we want to buy cheaper, we want to do this. That's not how it works for us. We can't pay our producers at least 20% more than they would make elsewhere. Then we can't do business that way. And to be honest, some people have criticized us as having an NGO mentality. But it's just, to me, that should be the new way to do business. And, that's a very strong opinion I have. And the fact that, we talk about the problem with capitalism and how bad it is. I think a lot of people are doing business like it was done in the 50s, and they can't figure out why it's not working or why it leads to decisions that end up hurting people. My biggest wish is in the next 5-10 years, all the conversations we're having now, whether it's race or inequity and the things that are happening, lead to different metrics for businesses, because that to me is the key. That's everything right now. And we've been fortunate that that's what I've had. And like I said, I built the business by accident. I just kind of started building it and just growing it. We'll do 55 million this year. We have about 120 employees. We have 2 facilities. I do a lot internationally. And I think honestly, our saving grace has been that we don't care how we look on normal, measurables. We care how we look on our own measurables. And I think the meaningfulness of that also has given us a lot of kind of fighting power and the ability to do things that maybe other companies wouldn't have the stomach to go through. So, I mean, that's kind of a quick, overlook of how we built the business. I don't know if you guys have specific questions or want any specific insight. My company is essentially a reflection of me. When I was struggling in 2012 or so to kind of just break through, I changed our model from this kind of typical vision, mission kind of presentation. I said, why do I wake up every day and go through the lawsuits and the embezzlements and the near bankruptcies and all the things I've been through? And I literally just wrote it down. I'm like, well, that's my purpose. My purpose is to eliminate systemic poverty in Latin America. And this is how I want to do it. And I made that the company purpose. And after that, I decided that anybody that joins the company needs to align with that 100%, whether they're in accounting or sales or whatever it might be. And we're going to join this kind of, movement. We're going to bring people in to be part of that. And that's been extremely energizing and really simplifying to us, to really align with a purpose, because ultimately we all wake up in the morning to fight for something. And for some people it's money. For some people it's, I want to be rich, whatever it is. But I think if you don't understand that, it's tough out there. I mean, it's tough to build a business. And I think you have to kind of check with yourself what matters to you and why you're doing things. And if you remind yourself of that, you have a good chance of being able to get through some of the tough times. And, I've had a lot of tough times, and that's what got me through it. So I think the purpose that we put on in place in 2012, 2013 really kind of drove it home for us. And it's made a huge impact. So, I mean, that's kind of the overview. I don't know if you guys have questions, or if you want me to talk about anything specific, any challenges, any, epiphanies.
Can I ask you a question?
Of course.
What was your toughest time? Like, can you describe that moment? Like how?
There's been a lot. I think my toughest time was when I had a CFO who was skimming money by not depositing payroll deposits. I found out by finding 40 envelopes from the IRS in his drawer. I called the IRS to tell them. They responded by sending officers to my facility to take an inventory of everything they were going to seize. He turned around and sued me. So I was fighting a lawsuit. He convinced somebody else to sue me that I had licensed a shop too. I had the IRS on me, and I could barely sleep and keep the lights on. And so, those were the moments when, and I fought through it. And I still, in that moment, I didn't know why I was fighting through it. And that's why I literally sat down and wrote out, why am I doing this? And I think for me, that was going through that, as hard as it was the best thing that happened to me, because it showed me the power of having a purpose. And that's a very specific example, but I think overall my challenge, to be frank, the way I've built the business, it sounds nice now where we are today. It's not easy, right? I've been broke, the first 10 years of the business. I didn't have the cash to do the things I wanted to do. I was running on razor thin margins. So I think the overall biggest challenge on a more macro perspective is access to cash. I just didn't have the access to the cash that I needed. And I found ways to create it. I opened retail shops because I realized, well, in retail, you get money every day. In wholesale, it's every 30 days. If I open shops, I'll be able to take money out of the till, use that to pay my wholesale, and kind of work the cash flow. But overall, I think access to capital was probably the first 10 years. My biggest struggle now, to be honest, is as we've grown, is to maintain that model on a scalable level. Because one of the things that has been the biggest disappointments for me in the last 5 years is, as hard as I work to be a different company that truly cares about everybody that works for us, it's almost like society doesn't want to believe that's true. And even some of my own employees still have that, us against them mindset. And it's very hard to really let people see that we truly genuinely want everybody to move forward, get ahead. So it's that alignment that's my biggest struggle today. It's the metrics we have that we believe in and that people say they want to be a part of isn't always what you see in real life in practicality. So it's that mind shift that's the challenge today.
I'm curious about so you talk about finding cash by opening retail so that you could pay for things. So what are some of the experiments that you've tried throughout the years to keep the business going or expand the business in different ways? And which ones worked, which ones didn't? Like, there's some pretty epic fails in there, or some like really like unbelievable successes you didn't see coming?
I've been pretty creative, and I've had to be. I think opening the retail shops was one of them. Obviously, there was a startup cost to that. I think my biggest thing, and it sounds corny, but for me, it's like my character was everything. And when I said I would do something, I did it with suppliers, so that the company that gave me a $500 line of credit, when I got Costco, I said, "Hey, I'm going to need a $50,000 line of credit." I already had credibility with them. My character had spoken, and to be frank, I built this business on the backs of my suppliers, and not my farmers, but my U.S. suppliers. Meaning, I couldn't afford a roaster. I convinced the company to give me a roaster and let me pay it off over 12 months. So I was able to really kind of convince people of what I was doing and allow them to believe in it, to really get kind of non-traditional financing. You know, um, and I think when people see that you're committed to building something, they'll benefit, right? I mean, there's companies out there, insurance companies, the paper goods companies, whoever we started with 23 years ago, the numbers we're doing today are exponentially higher than 20 years ago. And it's because they believed in us. So I think I treated every supplier as a partner. And my kind of conversation with them was, I need you to be a partner now and help me, and you'll benefit when we grow. And it's helped. And there's probably 15 suppliers that I've done business with at least 21 years as a result of that.
Martin,
And I've made mistakes too. I've taken kind of hard money, I had an investor for 2 weeks, a big hospitality company. They do a lot of the contract feeding in colleges, and it sounded great, right? They're going to triple our business, quadruple our business. We did our deal, and all they wanted to do was take a management fee and just create more costs. And it was bad. It was a problem. So I literally went to their office one morning and said, "Look, we're going to leave today, and either you own 100% of this company or none of it. But I can't be partners," because I literally see it when somebody is kind of in that mindset where they're taking money from our producers. It's not even just me. It's like, why am I paying you a management fee? Why do I have to hire a new accounting person to run your software that is antiquated and totally redundant? And I took it personally towards like my purpose. And so I kind of had a bad taste in my mouth for investors after that. But like I said, it lasted 2 weeks. But yeah, I've had to be creative. And I think just the timing of money and knowing how to also leverage the fact that every company out there that you need as a supplier needs you as a customer. And understanding that dynamic and understanding and I tell my son this and everybody I talk to is, everybody is driven by their self-interest. As altruistic as you might be, we all have our self-interest. So if somebody's in the business of selling cups, they want to sell 1 billion cups, not 10 cups. So if I can tell them, look, sell me 10 today, and maybe one day you'll sell me 1 billion once we partner into this. And I think that was very helpful to understand that, and to leverage that energy, because I really had a lot of suppliers that were kind of in our corner and helped me even with proposals, and were really good partners to us to help us grow.
I've got a hand up. Peterson, do you want to go ahead and unmute yourself and ask a question?
Yeah, so thanks, Martin, and for making time for this. Learning a whole lot. So I kind of wanted to, I have 3 questions. The first one is, if you could sort of, and you've already talked about this, how talk a bit more about how your key stakeholders have evolved over time, and how that has affected, how has that affected or not affected your commitment, your business model, and your commitment to your purpose. The second question is, from an internship, there are several people who are looking for internships at this point. From that perspective, how do you assess potential hires' alignment with your purpose and your mission? Are there HR processes? Are you very involved, or you trust that to others? And the last question is, beyond you being involved in the running of the company, how do you, or have you positioned the company to stay true to the founding ideals?
All right.
Thanks.
So the first one related to the stakeholders, and as we grow, I guess the question is, how do we make sure that all the stakeholders are kind of aligned and part of that growth and that mindset? That's been a little bit of a tough process for me and a disappointing one in some ways. In the fact that I really wanted to believe that everybody who worked for Mayorga was just living this purpose like 24/7 like I do. And that's just a fallacy. I mean, I own the company. I have this kind of greater vision for it. And some people, and it's okay, just want a job, right? They want to feel good about their job, but they just, it's Friday, it's 5:30, I need a drink, I'm done. So I've learned also then that that's a motivator, and that's an acceptable motivator for individuals. And what I've always said is, as long as they know that Mayorga is the best place to work. So I think understanding each different stakeholders' priorities. And so for me, we have a minimum wage of 19 an hour. Nobody starts at our company less than 19 an hour. We have, full insurance, 401k matching, all kinds of, we're building a classroom in our facilities because we want to help people learn English because we have a lot of Spanish speakers. So it's a lot of kind of those ancillary things that, it's improvement, right? It's growth. We help people when they want to buy a car, we give them a loan when they want to buy their first home with a down payment. So it's understanding that we can have the same purpose, but it doesn't all have to look the same and kind of be structured in the same way. Same thing with clients. I have some customers who just care about profitability and margin. So I can speak that language and I can create programs for them that are going to make them a lot of money. I don't even need them to care about purpose, as long as I can get their money to allocate into my purpose. So I think it's understanding, again, what drives people and what they're measured by. And it's going to be different for your staff and your customers and your suppliers. And it's kind of I think a very important skill set, and an important skill set in the sales and business development side of things too. And then we do a PI assessment, the personality index, I think it stands for. And they get tested and to make sure that the skill set matches. So, the skill set match is important for the roles, but I actually interview anybody coming into the company before they get before they finally get hired. And I say interview, it's a conversation. Do you really care about this? And what does caring look like to you? It doesn't have to look like I'm going to work 100 hours a week, but it needs to be there in some sense. I already forgot your second question. The second question?
You kind of spoke about the first two, and the other question was just like how you have been working on making sure that beyond, like looking 20 years out, if you're not involved in the day-to-day, that the company stays true to the founding values.
I think what I do and what I'm doing now, I hired a president. I gave somebody a promotion to be company president to do more of the moving parts side of the business. I'm still heavily involved, and I'm not heavily involved in a micromanaging sense, which probably the first 12 years of the business I was. I'm heavily involved because one of my greatest strengths has been to know my business from source to sales, all the aspects of the financial pieces. I mean, my customers tell me that a lot of the business we get is because they know if they call me, they'll get a response in an action plan within 24 hours. So if they talk to Starbucks, it's 3 weeks before they even get a call back. But I think it's leading through example. I wake up every morning by 5. I have a very regimented schedule. I follow up on everything. I show the discipline that I think is required to grow and evolve. And I reward people who grow and evolve, and I pay people well who, get through merit, get that growth in the business. And, I think I've shown that over 23 years of running the business, I don't live an extravagant lifestyle and I'm not using people to make me rich. I see this truly as a team effort, and the people who are part of it are benefiting. I have some people who are, and actually what I do is I bring in very inexperienced people who, my current president, Erin she was stocking shelves at a grocery store 4 years ago. But you see these skills and the passion in people. And to me, you have to understand, that's like one of my biggest heartbreaks is when I go to Latin America and I see some people who are brilliant. I'm like, this guy is pulling weeds in a field because he doesn't have education, doesn't have the means to. That like lack of opportunity to me is like everything. So for me, I want to believe that I'm an opportunity creator, not just for farmers, but also for staff. And I think when people see that, and people see that you give them the opportunity to succeed, it's very empowering and very kind of, that energy is multiplied. And those people then feel like, well, I was given the opportunity, now I'm going to give other people the opportunity. But if you look at our management team and you break down their resumes, And I tell people every day, I'm not qualified to do what I do. I've never run a business this size. This is, every day I wake up, I'm like, I got to figure it out. So we're all figuring it out together. And it's a kind of a powerful thing and humbling at the same time, but it helps us kind of understand that we'll just figure it out together, and we do.
Thanks so much, Martin. AP, if you'd like to go next.
Yeah. So you touched briefly on kind of how you would go to investors and really show that your business model would pay off. What did you specifically do to show off your business model and show that it would be productive over time and for them to invest? Was it forecasting models? So that was my first question. And then the second is kind of an add-on of what did you do to show these investors that your model was different than others? So what was the differentiation factor?
Well, I didn't go through investors. I to be honest, I got in bed with this investor because they promised a lot of things. So I got excited by them. I think, to be frank, I think sitting down with anybody that's going to put any money in your hands and proving that your numbers. I always tell people it's not about impressing anybody with your numbers. It's impressing them with your ability to know and understand your numbers. And to be honest, that's one of the most shocking things to me about people running businesses who don't know their numbers. So I think knowing your business in and out financially, P&L, balance sheet, cash flow, all the things and all the, your margins and what that turns into, I think that's going to be the most powerful thing. Your numbers don't have to blow anybody away as much as your ability to understand your numbers and react to them. Because I think the financial modeling piece of the business is kind of a lost art. The differentiation is strange, right? And that's the hard part because, it's such a saturated world we're in right now with everybody opening business, everybody. And I think that's the biggest thing I tell people all the time. And, I don't know what kind of business you're looking at, but for me, it's like differentiation and brand are everything right now, and I think, and they're one and the same, right? Your brand has to differentiate you and it has to be based on how you're differentiated. For me right now, we are a company that I've recognized we're going to be leaders as a Latino-owned company. And I'm trying to tap into the Latino market, which is 20% of US consumers who has never been spoken to as a specialty consumer. They've been spoken to as tortillas, rice, and beans consumers. But we have income, we have resources, and we do like nice things. So for me, I want to be in the forefront of that. I want to be a Latino-owned company that cares about organic, cares about our countries. I care about organic because I care about the people if you're from Colombia, yeah, our farmers in Colombia are taken care of. We look out for your people. I think differentiation, and I just had a talk with somebody about this morning. If there's anything you put your time into is what is it that's special about me and my company or my model or my solution? Because what I find is people are going to the veneer surface of what they think makes them special, and they're all the same. So in my industry, we're direct trade, we care about farmers, we're specialty grade. They're all seeing the same thing, and they literally all think they're different. And they can all be discounted in one fell swoop and just be gone. So I think that whole thing, and it's like a personal gut check. It's like that moment that I had in 2012 when I was struggling. It's like, if I'm struggling so much, why am I putting up with this crap? What is it about this? And I think that moment of like looking yourself in the mirror and wondering why you're doing this, it's important. And, and I tell people, it doesn't have to be altruistic. It can be greed. There's nothing, if that's who you are, it's okay. But I think knowing yourself and what you want is also knowing who you are and what you're going to present to the marketplace. And you have to know that, and you have to be able to like live and breathe that every day.
Thanks.
Thanks, Martin. Barthy, you can go next.
Hi. So my question was along the lines of your impact. So seems like your company is doing amazing things, but seeing as how you're very finance oriented, how do you quantify your impact? Is it by the number of coffee bean growers that you impact, or like the amount of money that you're giving back to them, or like how do you quantify your impact?
This is a tricky question, and this is one I literally butt heads with my staff about because I'm such a contrarian. Like I hate we need a sustainability report. I feel like that's such a pandering, and I'm sorry if I've offended anybody, but this is just how I believe. Like I feel like let's kind of force this topic onto, because that's what people want to see and hear. I completely disagree with it. I tell people, if you have a supplier diversity, initiative, then you already did something wrong, and maybe you need to, take a look. And I believe in that for our company, which is, I don't want to have to explain to the market why we're great. I think over time, you're going to see it. Over time, and I try to do it in subtle ways. You look at our social media, and it's about farmers and their empowerment. It's videos about them, and it's talking about, literally, and it's little stuff that we want people to see, but we're not going to highlight it, which is, we do an interview with a chia producer, and like, I bought this house with money from chia. Like, I bought a house, it's life-changing stuff. I think once I put it into a nice, pictorial or whatever, like it cheapens it, and I feel like I'm doing it for the wrong reasons. And I'm very principled, and I maybe go too far into my own principles when I run the business. So my metrics are not external, but we do have our own internal metrics where, like I said, we want at least 20% higher than the market. We want always to grow our producer base by at least 10%. And then there's a lot of kind of ancillary things, which is, it's not just about paying them more, it's how do we become better problem-solving partners. So I'll fight on their behalf with their banks to negotiate down their interest rates. I'll work with their kids who want to build a mountain bike track around the coffee farm to have a tourism, business. And we'll, so the way it's a very human thing that's not, I feel like once we put it into black and white, we kind of cheapen it. So I think it's very internal, and it's a very kind of, look at our relationships, our relationships with our producers are truly like, family based at this point. I mean, we literally stay at each other's houses, and and it's funny you asked that, because this week that's been kind of a thing where I've been getting pushed by my staff of like, we literally, with chia alone, we generate $1.2 million in extra income to 700 producers in Latin America and in Nicaragua alone. I feel like once I say that, the question of why I'm doing it is out there, and I don't like that. So I'm probably the wrong person to ask that, because I'm not, and I don't believe in give back. You mentioned, how much you give back. And I get asked that by a lot of big retailers, like, well, what's your give back program? I said, look, I don't take, so I don't have to give back. I empower and I help kind of build. If I'm giving back, I'm doing something wrong. And a lot of the give back programs that I know in coffee, it's, I'm going to take 10 million and give you $1 million, but I'm going to look like a hero when I do it. And it's so disingenuous. Unfortunately, my knowledge of supply chain and economics and everything that really happens in these countries is so deep that I see through all the BS, and it bothers me. And I just don't want to be another one of those. So we have our own, but you'll never see Mayorga brag about too much of like the impact. What we want is for you to see, hey, that guy's, farm now has a house and they have running water, and they, we'll do interviews in their house and they'll talk about how they just built this house from the money they got. But you'll never see us put out the sustainability report and all these things, because it's too self-serving from my perspective. And I'm probably wrong, because I think a lot of people probably think I'm full of it. And like, well, you probably don't do anything. So, but that's just my belief.
Thank you. Very interesting. Thank you.
Thanks. Tyson, take it away.
So what are your strategies on expanding, and have you ever thought about expanding to other like continents or?
So my big push has been, I want to create equality in Latin America by building demand in Latin America. So I own a lot of property in Nicaragua, Costa Rica, and Peru. And my goal is to build facilities there to then branch off into creating increased demand in those countries. Because I think the extractive mindset will go away once producers and people in those countries have options. Right. So, and Brazil's done a great job of this. Brazil has done a very good job of driving internal demand, where now producers have the option to sell into their own country, and they don't have to beg, foreigners to come in, and whoever will buy it, whatever price, they'll just happily sell it. So I'm trying to build that in Latin America and put our brand there, because it resonates very much in the Latino community. Externally, as far as, manufacturing and distribution, I think if anywhere we go, because North America, we have pretty well covered, is I'd go into Spain and then look at something in Europe. And that's, COVID has kind of put a wrench into everything. I was in the middle of building a facility in Peru, and we're, starting in Nicaragua, but everything's come to a screeching halt. And it's actually made me question a lot of things, right? Because, during the panic of March, April about, are we going to run out of food? I realized the downside of having, a lot of investments in Latin America with processing there, when maybe I just need to get stuff up here quickly, process it quickly in the States, and then turn it. So we're trying to figure all that out too.
I don't know. I'm Vietnamese, and Vietnam is like a pretty big producer of coffee,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm pretty sure they have like, I don't know, some sort of issue with that. It is still a third world country over there, so I don't know. If you have another target for expansion, maybe you could go to Vietnam. I don't know.
Yeah, it's a great market, and the Vietnamese coffee has its own kind of niche. I think the problem we have in a lot of these developing countries is, and it sounds controversial, but it's the mindset of colonialism that's left over, which is even if the colonialists are gone, those in the countries who benefited are still benefiting. So you have 3 families dominating an entire country. And so it's very hard to go into our countries and make an impact unless you're tied in. And what I'm trying to do is build a US brand. And when you have a US brand and you take it back into those countries, you have a different kind of power and a different kind of clout. Because, and that's been my biggest lesson, is brand is just such a problem solver. If you have a brand, you get premiums, it's just tremendous. So my goal is to build the brand. And I say Spain because my last name is originally from Spain, and there's connection, and that people will feel to it. And then I could leverage that.
Thanks, Martin. Holly, I think you had a question next.
Sure. Hi, Martin. Thank you for being here. I had a follow-up question to Barthy's comment about impact metrics, and I sort of was tying it back myself to something you said in your intro. Do you think you're able to sort of have that point of view because you don't have shareholders who you have to send these impact reports to? And if you could link that maybe for the students, or if that is so.
That's 100%. I can tell people I do whatever I want, and I've done some stupid things. If I'd done it with investor money, I wouldn't be running this company anymore. So I have the luxury of doing those things because I don't have investors, right? But when I look at it also about, I do it for the people that matter to me. So while I don't have investors, like Costco's a big client. They've been to Nicaragua. So what I do is I believe in the reality of, let's go see what the impact is. And Costco, and people like to knock big companies. I can tell you, of any company I've dealt with, and I deal with the little tiny guys to Whole Foods, Costco has been everywhere and is going to, turn over every stone and make sure that what we say we're doing. So while I don't have investors, I have large clients like Costco who do want to verify, who do want to talk to producers. They do an ethical sourcing audit on me and make sure that I'm paying what I say I'm paying. They make sure I'm doing what I say I'm doing. So because I don't have investors, I don't have to do it outwardly. But trust me, I spend a lot of time doing it with my clients that matter, who are kind of the next step after, or maybe after employees, after investors. So yeah, what I'm telling you is, because I have the freedom of not having investors, but it's taken me a long time to get to this point where I can be happy that I don't have investors and kind of do those things. And honestly, what I'm trying to do, and maybe I have a chip on my shoulder about it, but I'm trying to prove that the business models that we're building need to change, in that we can't keep saying cool new things but doing the same old crap, right? We can't be saying we're gonna do this, we're gonna do that, but we're still running the same business models with the same, it's not real. So I really kind of believe that if I have to walk the walk, then if I want to walk the walk, then I have to really just embed these things into my business. And I personally believe that business should do good regardless, and that you shouldn't have to tell everybody about it. And it's like waking up every day and being like, I don't know, I didn't hit my kids today. Yeah, like you shouldn't. So don't. So move forward and just kind of keep doing that every day. And eventually people will figure it out.
Thank you.
Thanks, Martin. I have a bit of a pointed follow-up question regarding your practices. So you've been doing this since the 90s and running it ethically. And in 2019, the Business Roundtable said that the purpose of business has changed from shareholder focus to stakeholder focus as well. We had an event with Tata that their retort to that was, we've been doing this for over 100 years and you've been doing this for 30 years now. Have you seen a shift in the last year in your competition's mindset to become more similar than you? Or is it kind of words like you've been saying and more reports?
I honestly wrote an article for LinkedIn. I had to delete it because I didn't want to bother everybody. But I feel like the fraud and the saying the right thing has gone off the charts, and people aren't doing it. And I think it's empowered a lot of desperate small companies to really put out a lot of lofty claims that are just completely untrue, and they're being celebrated just because they're small. And I think we're taking this new mindset of big is bad, small is good. And, you know, you have a lot of people in small companies saying a lot of things that people want to hear, and they're being celebrated and they're being supported, and they're loved by the market. They're loved by the press. They're loved by consumers. And I think that's the unfortunate reality of human nature, that, you know, there's people taking advantage of it. You know, and people ask me, like, what companies do you know and respect and do what you do? I mean, we're in Latin America constantly. I've never met anybody from Starbucks. I've never met anybody from, I mean, we haven't. We've met their traders and brokers, but even the small guys, they can't even afford to fill a container of coffee, but, you know, they're talking about all the great things they're doing. So I haven't seen it, to be honest. It's disappointing, but I really haven't. I've heard a lot of talk, and I've seen a lot of good articles and really cool visuals, but I've yet to really see that. Maybe you guys know of somebody you can introduce me to, but I haven't seen it. That's just, you know, at least maybe I should get out more, but I really haven't seen it.
I've definitely seen a lot of graphics as well. I haven't seen any real instances, so I was curious if you had witnessed any, but definitely.
It's tricky because, again, you know, and I tell people all the time, it's the small or medium guys that are more guilty of it. We want to blame the big guys. The big guys have done their own things, but at least, you know, like, I think Nestle's a very conscientious, good company. Most people think they're horrible. Now, water and other elements I know there's issues with, but on coffee, Nestle does more than any company I know, and they get vilified. Then you have a young startup that buys coffee from New York, claims that it's their uncle's coffee and they're saving their family farm. Nobody's looking into that, and all of a sudden they're in the Huffington Post. So it's just, we want to believe a narrative that's convenient to us, and that's a narrative that's convenient right now.
Another follow-up question I had, and it could be a simple answer you've given in the past. A lot of larger corporations that are shareholder focused use different metrics like ESG to quantify the impact they're having. Have you ever looked at quantifying your impact, or is it the buck stops with me and I know I'm doing a good job, so I don't need to have that data-driven evidence?
You know, we've looked at it, and we're looking, I'm kind of just yielding a little bit this time to the request, because, you know, marketing and our different people are asking for it. I think for what's easy for us, which is how many producers do we support? What is the premium that we pay, and what does that equal to in dollars? You know, and they were smart. So they came to me and said, look, we paid $6 million more to our producers than they've been in the market. Don't you want people to know that? I guess that is good. I mean, so I think simple bite-sized stuff like that, and stuff that's easy to kind of just, you know, defend, if you will, because we do have to defend anything we do and say. So I think something as simple as, like, look, we support this many producers, we paid this much of a premium, and, you know, simple things like that, I think we would do. But anything too formalized, it's just not our style. And to be honest, the clients who support us in volume and the people who do private label for already see and know that.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing.
Of course.
I'll give the audience one more minute if there are any final questions. And if not, Martin, are there any final thoughts you would like to leave us on for all of these student entrepreneurs or students who are interested in impact-driven business to take away from today's talk?
You know, I think one of the things, and I think Holly touched on it, which is not having investors and having built the business I built, I can say certain things, and, you know, it doesn't necessarily mean it's the factual, you know, realistic way for most companies to be built and start up. But I do think that if it's something you truly care about, it's something to put in your horizon, right? And to work towards. And I think the pressure to be the do-gooder and the, you know, influencer, and there's a lot, I feel bad at it right now for a lot of young startups because the pressure is massive. It's It's like, you have to do good, be good, make money, do like, you can't just be a struggling entrepreneur that's broke and doesn't have money to pay the bills, you know, because that's the reality. But, you know, we want to make these young people feel like they have to like support their staff, pay better than everybody, pay, you know, premium to their supply. I mean, it's too much. And I always tell people, look, your priority when you start up is to you and whoever's investing in you and supporting you. And it's okay to have the vision and horizon to get to something bigger and better, but the pressure to do it today, that's what leads to the fraud. That's what leads to the people that are making claims that aren't true. And I mean, I had one guy yesterday and he was asking me about that. I said, look, you're better off doing an Instagram story instead of lying about supporting farmers. Be like, I'm having a hard time paying my bills. And this is what it looks like to run a business. I wake up at 4 a.m. I go to bed at 10:30 at night. I'm exhausted. I'm out of my, like, actually that would be so refreshing and people would like you for that. You know, anybody can sit in a, you know, fake private jet and pretend like that. It's not reality. This pressure young entrepreneurs have right now is off the charts. And I think it'll be very refreshing to be like, I want to get to this, but right now my job is to build a business, and to build a business, here's what I need to do. I think that I'd love to see that, because I think the pressure is too much right now for young entrepreneurs.
That was awesome. Thank you so much, Martin, for being here, for sharing your thoughts and all this information on your company and your strategies and all this. It's really super enlightening and very helpful. So really appreciate it.
If anybody wants to reach out, feel free anytime. Happy to help out.
Awesome. And thank you all for being here as well. We hope you have a wonderful rest of your Friday and a lovely weekend. Feel free to join us next week, same time, basically same place, although I think it's a different Zoom link, for Maurice Boissier's Size Up the Market workshop, which continues our Pitch Dingman Prep series. Thank you, Nima, for being here as well in CSVC. And I wish you all a lovely rest of your day.
Thank you. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.